Alright, it's Sunday now, and whoa, look at that, the car's moved. So I had to reverse it back up because it's, you know, Perth weather. It's going to be a real rainy day again. But yeah, last night I reversed it up, so the clutch engaged fine. Yeah, the only thing is, because I did lap the flywheel on our lapping table, I'm going to have to decide the best course of action as to bedding the clutch into the flywheel again. I think, again, sort of like engine building, you know, it'll depend on who you talk to, and it'll depend on who their dad is and what they've told them, you know. It's like superstition. I'll read around and decide a best course of action on how to do that. It's probably a case of just sort of reversing it out the driveway in low range, making sure not to burn the clutch at all, then driving it around and sort of giving it a few good hard launches, you know, trying not to slip it too much. But anyway, apart from that, what we got going on today, I've got the harness here, which I'm started peeling and I'm going to start butchering up. Okay, so I've fooled around and probed around a bit with the wiring diagram, and what I've found is the white wire that runs to the MAF sensor, which is back here, the airflow sensor. White, if you trace down, it's an ignition 12 volt. So this is a 12 volt wire, which is useful because I'm probably going to use that 12 volt either to run the light in my oil pressure light, and there's also a 12 volt over here out of this cluster, which I probed. The shut-off solenoid didn't come on for some strange reason, or the wire that it should be, but my one did. But there's another 12 volt here, which I think I'll either use for the fans, or I will use this relay to trigger the fan, depending on how much current the fan needs to draw, because this is just a thin gauge wire. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to peel back and cut off and crimp off all of the wires that I don't need. So I'll keep the 12 volts and see what I want to go from there. But you've got to make sure that the ECU is earthed out if you want anything to work. So I think you can get the glow plugs to work from factory if they were working before by just earthing the ECU and making sure it's plugged in. But yeah, no, I've put in my own button, so that'll be fine. So I've consolidated the harness as to how I'm going to want it, and all of the wires that I don't need from the pump I've just taped up, and they're going to sit under the intercooler just out of the way a bit. The rest of the wires that I am going to need, so I've got the 12 volt over here that was originally going to the throttle, sorry, to the airflow sensor. So that's going to be my 12 volt running to the light in the back of my gauge. Then I'm going to make a bracket up and pop through the bonnet just so I can see it, which will look sick. And as for the rest of the wires, I've earthed them out over here, and I've just got them so that I'll still be able to access the fuel screw down here. It may be a bit of a pain, in fact it probably will be near impossible with the intercooler on top of it, but that's not a huge issue. It's only like a 10-minute job to a 5-minute job to take it off. 4 bolts and 2 hose clamps. But anyway, I'm going to sort out the light in the back of this one and decide where I'm going to put it. Sort out this wire running to it, and yeah, then I'll put the intercooler on and put all the pipes up. I've decided for the fan for the intercooler, I'm going to tee that into this relay here, which I've got for the shut-off solenoid and the fans there, just because this is a big 30 amp relay and it'll allow a lot of amperage to run through to the fan. I don't want to use the 12 volt coming out of the ECU, because if you run too much current through that, it'll sort of just pop a resistor inside the ECU and yeah, ruin it for everyone. So I'll use those 12 volts to either switch solenoids down the track or just other stuff. The light in that is literally like no amperage at all. So I can't find the gasket that goes between the turbo and the first charge pipe. So I've cut a bit of sticky tape out, some of the weird gaffer sort of, I think it's 357, it's like painter's tape, I guess you could call it. So it's not like completely rigid, it's like a little bit sticky, so I reckon it'll crush up nice and create a pretty good seal. I will get a proper gasket down the track if I can be bothered, but I'd say this will work for now. I'll probably do a boost leak test or two, but you know, considering the intake manifold was just hand tight when I took it off, I'd say it'll be a lot better than it was before. So I'll whack this on and probably start it up before connecting the intercooler and the main throttle, or sorry, the main inlet to the intake plenum, just to blow out any bits of crap, and yeah, just to make sure I don't suck anything into the engine as soon as I get it going. So I started just then, but even after glowing it, it was a little bit knockety-tickety. So I've just loosened the pump and retarded the timing a bit more. So yeah. Sounded okay, oil pressure was good, stayed at temperature, so I'm going to sort out the EGT gauge now. I might have a bit of trouble running it all the way through the cabin because the wire may not be long enough, but I might just see if I can find a hole on this side of the cabin just so I can mount it up next to where the boost gauge is in the pillar. Okay, so may not be able to see that. Put the EGT probe down in there. I've run it up the back, up here, and it runs over down to this side. The reasoning behind that is I want it to be mounted where the pillar is, and if I ran it around the inside on the passenger side, I wouldn't have enough length in this steel cable. So it comes over here, and I've poked a bit of welding wire down through the footwell, which should be sticking out just there. You can see, just there. So I'm going to give that a yank now. I've electrical taped my wires to the end of this wire, and fingers crossed they don't pull off when I try and pull it through. Okay, so I managed to get it through. That was a massive pain, and I really don't want to do it again. I actually ended up busting some of the the two bullet connectors, so I might have to crimp my own ones on. So as far as the gauge goes, I'm probably just gonna pillar, yeah, I'll probably just mount it down there or something, somewhere easy to see. For some reason I don't personally like the pillar pods that go all the way up, so I'll probably just mount a big cluster down here. So yeah, we'll just set it up there. I reckon that'll look sweet. And I think the loom that comes with it, oh yeah, that should be plenty long enough. So I might have to fool around and pull out the trim to try and get it to run the wires down into the footwell. So with the exhaust temp gauge, I've got the wires down here, I've got the signal wires crimped on, power for the exhaust temperature gauge. What I'm going to do is just down under here, let me just position my light, hang on. Down under here, there's this connector just here. So this is the original scanning tool. So the old RDs, this is a 1997 vehicle I believe, and they didn't have OBD2. This is OBD0 I believe. And this connector has a 12 volt switched ignition source, which I'm just going to pull from to run to here because I'm not going to need it since I'm fully mechanical now. I may even borrow the earth as well. So the way I've found that out is coming over to this wiring diagram here. So where are we? Here we go. So yeah, RD28, ECM power, blah blah blah. Diagnostics connector just here. So we've got the white and black one that runs all the way up there to the 10 amp, which goes to diagram 1, and that's a switched ignition source. And then you've got the black, which is a cylinder head ground, so that must run out with the loom all the way into the engine bay. So I'll pull those wires from the diagnostic connector. I'll just verify that they're the right colour. So I've touched back the fuel screw a little bit, as well as I've taken off the boost compensator and adjusted the actual spindle in it so that I get the least amount of fuel gain as it moves down from positive boost pressure. I've just done that because it was really smoky before, as everyone could see. I may have to change that back since now that I've connected all of the hoses and stuff up. But I have got my EGT gauge in, so we're going to try and tune the idle up to the right temperature, and then I'll work from there. Okay, so I retarded a little bit more out of the pump, just because I thought it was a little bit too knocky when it was cold. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to throw the bonnet back on, hang my license plate just somewhere here, and yeah, then go for a burn up and down the back streets and see if my fueling is right. Well, I've driven the car up and down the block a few times and it's running actually pretty well. So last things now, I'm going to grind away where the bar's been welded on, sand it back and then give it a bit of a paint just so that I don't attract any unwanted attention, and then I should be able to throw that bar I've got on and things should be sweet, because as soon as I've done that, it should be road legal-ish. Okay, so I've got the bar in front of the car now. I've cleaned up the chassis rails as much as I can. I'm going to just grind them a bit more so that it sits more flush. And I've ran this old bolt I had down each bolt hole. I've ground a little relief into the threads with my die grinder, which makes it act sort of like as a tap. So as it goes down, it'll pick up any dust and muck and crap inside the bolt hole. So each bolt hole's good now. I'm going to grind a bit more, see if I can get it to sit a bit better, and then whack the bar on and buy some hardware at the local hardware store and jam it on. So I gave the chassis rails a coat of primer and then a coat of black just to hide any of the previous damage to them. And now I'm going to whack the bumper on. I've gone and got some bolts for it. So the bolts for these ones are M12 by 1.25, and I'm also going to install the bolts with a bunch of anti-seize just so they don't, you know, ruin themselves as I send them in with my Ugga Dugga gun. Damn, it's looking like a car again. Gonna check everything's tight and then finally go for a drive.